In just 30 days, I will be taking a Japanese fluency test. Only problem is, currently, I know zero Japanese. The United States government categorizes Japanese as a Category 4 language, or a super hard language. So why am I doing this?
It's because you're a weeb, obviously.
Listen, I may have drank from the anime Kool-Aid a bit, but mainly it's because my wife is Japanese. Her and I are going to Japan soon. I'll be meeting her family, and I would like to not completely rely on her for every interaction or completely embarrass myself while I'm there. So, over the next 30 days, I will be investing over 100 hours of study in an attempt to answer the question, can you pass the N5 in just 30 days? It's day 1 of class. You know what you need? That's right, pop quiz. When going to a new country, what is the most important phrase you must know how to say? A. Hello. B. Do you speak English? C. What did you just say? D. I'm on the verge of pooping my pants. Please point me towards the closest nuclear facility. If you chose D, that is correct. With an estimated 10 to 15% of Americans having IBS, there may not be time for simple introductions. With a quick Google search, we can easily see how to say this phrase. Keishoushitsu wa doko desu ka? Learning languages is actually very easy. Let me go share my progress with my wife.
And then she's like, that's not how you say that. Like, we just used the word for toilet. No one says that like that.
But if that's not how you say that, then what am I saying? I'm asking to use a powder room, like for makeup. Okay, maybe language is kind of nuanced. So if not Google, I don't really know where to start, honestly. I started to think maybe passing the JLPT N5 in 30 days isn't possible. And then I saw this video. She claims to have passed the N5 from 0 in 1 week. And you know, I'm just not realizing that I haven't even explained what that is. So for the uninitiated, the JLPT, or Japanese Language Proficiency Test, is a multiple choice exam that evaluates and certifies the Japanese language ability of non-native speakers. In this test, you are ranked in 5 levels. So basically, all you need to know is passing the N1 is kind of like you're a college freshman, and passing the N5 is kind of like you're a 6-year-old. So basically, I'm trying to become a Japanese 6-year-old. And 6-year-olds know how to ask where the bathroom is, so I have a lot to learn. I spent the rest of day 1 watching YouTube videos about how to learn Japanese. And let me tell you, the methods in which you should learn a language are all firmly agreed upon by basically everyone. Yeah, you English, buddy.
I'd start shadowing a couple times a week.
It's usually not productive to speak as a beginner or intermediate learner.
Kanken toreiningu ni. It's a great way to learn how to read and write Japanese.
It's not really the most practical idea to spend all of your time and energy learning how to write kanji, which you can't even read yet in most situations.
Try to reach for the stars.
It's better to use learning methods or resources that you actually enjoy using.
I know that Duolingo is really popular. I've used it. I just feel like it's not as practical if you really want to get a strong grasp on the language.
Reach as high as you can.
Manga. You could definitely read a bunch of manga right here.
Trying to read is just going to enforce incorrect perceptions on how Japanese is supposed to sound.
So basically, what I gathered from my research is just do whatever you want. If what you want is immersion. I heard this word more times on day 1 than I've heard the word immersion throughout my entire life up to this point. And what they're basically saying is, listen. Listen to the language. Maybe replace one of the podcasts you listen to with a Japanese podcast, or replace your Netflix subscription with the superior product. Delete your library on Spotify for something more classy. Live, eat, and sleep immersed into your new target language. Abandon your native tongue. Give up on your friendships. Remove all your betting in favor of something more fitting, all in favor of immersion. But also, none of that immersion matters if you don't pray to your new god, Anki. Having learned 0 Japanese words, I ended day 1 exhausted by how to learn Japanese meta commentary. Although there are some differing opinions on how to learn Japanese, there does seem to be one thing that everyone agrees upon. Start with the alphabet. if you can't read the script, then you can't really learn much, can you? Now, before I start talking about Japanese as a language, keep in mind, this is how I understand things. Someone who's not an expert by any means. If I get anything wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm really just trying to share my experience with you. I'm not trying to teach you Japanese. Now, with that said, this may be new information for you, but English has 26 characters. Just gonna let that sink in for a second. Now in Japanese, there are 46 characters, so nearly double. And then you can modify some of those characters to make them sound slightly different. So actually there's 71, but that's just hiragana. There's also katakana, which is all the same sounds, but just look different. That way, you, the reader, can know if the word is of unpure, disgusting foreign origin. So that's actually 142 characters in the basic scripts. And then there's a third alphabet called Kanji. I wish I was joking about any of this, by the way. And in Kanji, the characters are all entirely unique. And each character describes entire concepts or objects, of which there are thousands of. So yeah, just learn the alphabet. Hiragana and katakana are often recommended to be learned in pairs at the same time. I did not do this. I started out by just learning hiragana, and even just this one script took me far more than just one day. I would say I got around 70% of the characters within the first week, and then the rest just trickled in over time with exposure. But for me, this wasn't as easy as just memorize them, forehead. However, I can definitely agree that this is the best place to start. I started to notice these characters in media that I didn't notice before, which made me feel like a kakkoi kodomo. Kanji is obviously going to take a long time to learn considering there are thousands of them. But the common consensus on YouTube is to start learning these immediately. I did not do this. Just looking at kanji gave me mountains of anxiety. There was a giant laundry list of all these things that I needed to learn before I met my wife's family, and kanji just seemed unimportant by comparison. With this overwhelming list of fundamentals needed, I needed the God plan that encapsulated as many of these fundamentals into one practice. So here's what I came up with. On YouTube, there's a popular channel called Japanese Pod 101 with a series called Basic Vocabulary, which teaches you the most common 800 Japanese words. So I figured if I watched the entire series and memorized it, I would know every word needed to pass the N5. In order to learn 800 words in just 29 days, you need to learn 27.5 words per day in order to be prepared for the test. That is a lot of words. But take a look at my high school GPA. C's get degrees. So really, I only need to know 70% of 800, which comes out to 19.3 words per day to pass the N5 by the end of this challenge. But let's just round that up to 20. And conveniently, each of these episodes has 20 words in it. So here's the master plan moving forward. Watch an entire episode of Japanese Pod 101 every day.
That person's lips are thick.
Read, listen, shadow alongside, and then create a flashcard for each of those 20 words. And then I'll just study those flashcards before bed to commit them to memory. Now, I'm used to flashcards looking like this. However, everybody and their dog talks about how great an app called Anki is. Anki is an SRS, which basically means a flashcard app that is really smart about when it shows you each word based on how familiar you are with it. But in that moment of learning about Anki, I was in the middle of learning a mountain of other apps and really dreaded the idea of having another app to learn and manage. So instead, I was already using a note-taking app called Obsidian, and inside that app, you can get plugins for extra tools and functionalities. One of those plugins is spaced repetition, which is an SRS as well. However, this plugin is not Anki. It really wants to be Anki, but this plugin is not Anki. But that's all really a conversation outside the scope of this video. So for the purposes of this video, just think of this plugin as Anki's little brother. that fell down a well when he was 5, and then was found when he was 30, and is now trying his best to incorporate into the family business. I mean, he's trying. But you know what? It's technically flashcards, so that'll do, pig. 20 words per day. Read, listen, shadow, flashcards. And with any extra time in the day, listen to the episodes again for even more immersion. And here's what I found moving forward with this plan. This podcast is great, actually. I really enjoyed working alongside Risa. Actually, in the beginning of the series, some of the words I could just skip entirely because I already knew them. So here is where I come clean. This isn't my first time trying to learn Japanese. Words like konnichiwa or arigato are very simple words that many people know. If you've interacted with any amount of Japanese culture, you've probably heard them before. But words like gohan or mizu, I already knew them because of Duolingo. So let me be as transparent as I can. I met my wife in high school. When we met, I learned that she knew Japanese and became interested in the language. I acquired a copy of Japanese Rosetta Stone through Gray Area. I studied for about 30 minutes for 2 days, and then the program stopped opening because of said Gray Area. And then I just kind of moved on with my life. Then, about 5 years later, during COVID, I tried again with another app called Duolingo. Now, my second time around, I stuck with it for way longer, about 2 weeks. Duolingo was just way too slow. I don't know how many times it quizzed me on the meaning of rice and water, but I was starting to lose my mind. I ended up dropping the app because I felt like in order to get the most of it, I would have to pay for the app, which I didn't want to do because I didn't really have a great reason for learning Japanese at the time other than curiosity. So I'm not coming into this challenge with zero Japanese. I'm coming into it knowing about 5 words. Big. So getting to skip a few words here and there was nice. However, my overall feelings on the project were quickly going downhill. Most of the time when learning new things, I hit a wall around a few weeks in where the newbie gains start to slow down. However, with Japanese, I was struggling to even find those newbie gains at all. On day 3, I wrote this in my progress log. I'm experiencing a lot of doubt on whether I can really learn this or not. It's so foreign, and not being able to Google things is really making me dizzy. Later that day, I had a phone call with my sister-in-law, who knows Japanese as well, and she asked me a simple question. When you go to Japan, what do you want to be able to say? In hindsight, I probably should have already thought about this by now, but it stirred up a lot of questions in my mind. What do I want to be able to say? I'm glad she asked me this. However, this planted a little seed in my head, a seed of worry, doubt, and fear. With my current methods, I'm just kind of hoping that these words and phrases just come up during these Japanese pod episodes. But what if they don't? What if at the end of this, I just know how to say hajimemashite.
First time.
Hajimemashite.
First time.
Hajimemashite.
First time.
Hajimemashite. So out of fear and anxiety of having no control of what I'll be learning over these 30 days, I took my 2 hours a day of current study and I ramped it up even further. I started to try and take common conversations that I would have with my wife on a daily basis and translate them into Japanese so that way I can converse with her more outside of my native tongue. It started off simple. Ohayo, onaka suita, itarashai, but quickly became a bit degenerate. Oshiri, oppai, unchi, not uchi. You gotta be careful about that slip up. I learned all of these words to a deep level before I even knew the word for Japan in Japanese. Not sure if that's something to be embarrassed about or proud of, but this gave me a bit more direction in terms of the kind of things I wanted to learn rather than being at the mercy of this podcast completely. About a week into my learning, I had not exactly stuck to the 20 words per day plan. I was really trying my best, even out of town, I was making an attempt to learn new words. However, some days I was just too busy to reasonably learn all 20 words. And some days I was just so frustrated with my lack of reading comprehension that I just stuck to working on the alphabet. So around day 7, I had made about 80 words into flashcards. And of those 80 words, I had a good grasp on about 15 of them, which in a vacuum is not bad. But for my current goals, I am very, very behind. Moving forward, I would try and learn more than 20 words a day to catch up. But the more I tried to force in, the harder it was to memorize them all. And the more my flashcards started to pile up. I would do my flashcards before bed, and some days I would be sacrificing sleep, staying up hours past my bedtime just to try and clear the deck. Cause what's the point of spending hours making these flashcards if I don't actually study them?
I have been working on Japanese for 6.5 hours, dude.
Yet, losing sleep to study them was not helping me learn the next day, now was it? I was already starting to enter a bit of a toxic cycle. Around day 10, I was still learning the alphabet. Maybe it's because I'm a 2.4 GPA goober. But I also think that many people on YouTube make this out like it's way easier than it actually is. I was also starting to realize how many words are important to know for basic conversations that I might have with my in-laws. Things that were not so obvious to me originally. Knowing the word for beef is great, but what about all the days of the weeks? Or the months? Or the body parts? The colors? Common animals? Seasons? Vegetables? Ways to describe the weather, not to mention numbers. Japan. This is literal insanity. Why? Why, Japan? Come along, indulge in my suffering with me, would you? Here are a few contexts that you would use the number 9. Kyu, hiki, nin. So in different situations, you use like a slightly different ending to kyu. Well, what about these? Kokonoka, kokonotsu. Okay, so some of them use koko instead of kyu. Well, what about this one then? Kuji. And that's not even all of the variations. Kyusatsu, kyuko, kyukai, and the list goes on. And it's not just the number 9 either. Let's count down from 9 when referring to small animals. Kyuhiki, so hiki must mean small animal. Happiki, piki? Okay, so what's 7 small animals? Nanahiki. Back to hiki, I see. What about 6? Ropiki. Oh, so it goes hiki to piki, and then back to hiki, and then piki, and then just alternates? No. Go hiki, yon hiki, hiki. Why break the pattern? Okay. So what's 3 small animals then? Sanbiki. Biki? Biki? Numbers are such a core part to all of humanity. And this is how you do me, Japan? Japanese Pod, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't really address this. They knew this would just be too much to cover for a feeble-minded beginner such as myself. But you know how I have this wife who speaks Japanese? Getting to practice with her is so great. So great. And is a huge advantage, not only to my learning, but also to my motivation. However, occasionally she would just drop info bombs on me like this one and break my brain way too early in the learning process. Now, I've talked a lot about how hard Japanese is, but there's also a lot of parts that are very convenient. Take the word cat, neko. If you want to say cats, the word is still neko. You don't really change words when they become plural in Japanese. You just use context to get that across. Or often in Japanese, many parts of the sentence can just be omitted. Like if someone asks you, "Eiga dou datta?" which literally translates to movie how was, or how was the movie? You can just say "omoshiro-katta," which literally means interesting. In English, if someone asks you, "How was the movie?" and you said, "Interesting," it comes across a little like shorthand, or like maybe almost like passive aggressive. Like you just don't really want to talk about the movie. But in Japanese, there's no cultural obligation to saying anything other than interesting? Or how about some words that are just like sounds? I mean, all words are sounds if you think about it. But what I mean is more like, kind of like onomatopoeia. Words like fua fua or za za. Even the character Pikachu is made up of pika, which is like an onomatopoeia for lightning or sparks, and chu, which is one for mouse sounds. So Pikachu is kind of like sparkle mouse, I guess. I really love words like this, and there's actually a lot of them in Japanese. Nyoro nyoro, kira kira, poka poka. Or what about all the words that are in katakana? There are tons of words in Japanese that are just borrowed from the English dictionary, which makes learning those words really, really simple because they sound almost identical to their English counterparts. Kohi, cheese, sandoichi, and the list goes on. So in some ways, Japanese can be very easy or intuitive. And then you see a kanji like this, and all of that excitement is juiced from your soul. When absorbing the words in Japanese pod, I would actually start by writing them by hand into a journal, mostly because I heard somewhere that writing by hand is better for memorization. Then I would port them into Obsidian flashcards. And around day 15, I was falling very behind in this process. I had many pages of notes of new words that had not been entered into Obsidian yet. This was because at the same time, I was teaching myself to type on the home row. Doing these at the same time was a fantastic idea. So inputting these words into note cards was taking way longer at 10 words per minute and was taking away from my study time. However, possibly because I was typing so slow, on day 15, I also ran into this realization naturally while taking notes that just kind of blew my mind. Whoa. This is the kanji for car, and this is the kanji for bike. The bike kanji is what's called a jukugo, or a compound word built up of other kanji. The kanji that make up this word for bike are self, revolve, car, which basically reads self-revolving automobile, aka a bike. Genius. I was starting to realize that these jukugo should likely be seen as a sign of relief because it's constructed of lower level words to create a bigger idea. Now I have more clues as to what they're actually talking about. Figuring this out organically was so fascinating. If someone would have told me about this concept, I still think it would be cool, but learning it myself and realizing it through my own organic study was just like, it had such a profound impact on me.
Electricity car is train? Taught in grade 2. I'm getting my mind blown by what a 7-year-olds are learning. This really opened my eyes to the beauty of kanji and made me much more curious about what it would take to learn it instead of avoiding it. This was the moment that my goals started to change a little bit. Up to this point, I was just trying to scrape by. I was just trying to learn as fast as possible and just learn whatever is needed to pass the test and communicate the very basics to my in-laws. Now I was starting to become interested in the language itself and possibly even the idea of becoming fluent in Japanese. I immediately ordered 3 new books online. One for vocab, one for grammar, and one for my new interest, kanji. I also started to experiment around with free online tools, the main one being ChatGPT. I was very skeptical of every single answer I was given to every question I asked for a very long time. AI tends to just fabricate things when it doesn't know the answer, and I was struggling to verify these answers. Although there's a lot of resources for Japanese online, it can be very challenging to find hyper specifics about the language. It's just so hard to search things in Japanese unless you already know Japanese. So I started off using it sparingly out of fear of learning nonsense, but as time went on, I realized that its answers are, from what I can tell, very accurate on average. For some people, GPT may be a reason not to try as hard. You know, it can just do a lot of the translating for you. But for me, GPT seemed to be the best tool for learning the language myself, especially for free. The only problem is sometimes it uses these characters that I can't read.
Yep, we're nearly 3 weeks in and I still can't read a lick of katakana. In my defense, it's not like I'm not trying, okay? I'm averaging over 3 hours a day of study into just Japanese. There's just so much to learn about Japanese, especially at the start. And katakana is far less used, so I was not super pressed to learn this immediately. But with less than 2 weeks until my exam, I guess now's as good of a time as any. As was the case with hiragana, about 70% of the script came very easy. But the other 30%, such as shi and tsu, I would pretty much not be able to be 100% certain which is which the entire month. I wish I would have just bit the bullet and not learned any vocab for the first 3 to 5 days, just so I can hammer home the scripts at the same time. But alas, here I am on day 18 with about 8 of them memorized 12 days before my exam. I was, however, learning these faster than hiragana, probably because some of them look so similar, but also I was using the tofogu. Is that what it's called? But also, I was using the tofu. But also, and on day 18, I would also learn about the GOAT, the god of language learning, Steve Kaufman. This guy speaks over 20 languages at a fluent level. That is insane. His method of learning is just listen, or immersion. At this point, I've heard way too much advice. Write a lot, don't write. Listen, don't speak. Speak a lot. Study, don't study. I have no clue what is the right move. But there was one piece of advice that Steve said that really stuck out to me.
So I still think language learning comes down to finding a way to enjoy it, bombarding your brain, and trusting that your brain will learn in time.
The next day, I saw this sentence. I did what I always do and I paused the video and tried to work through what I was reading. Using what I learned about the use of katakana, even though I'd never seen the word, I was able to get opera pretty easy. Then I saw juroku. I knew what this was too. These were numbers I had seen individually, and I could guess what they meant together. Seiki was also a new word, but judging by the number and the context being opera, I could also guess that this meant century. Italia, it's written in katakana, so I could guess this one too. And the last word was hajimatta. I know hajimemashite. And just like that, I had fully understood my first complete sentence by only using context clues, exposure of the particles, without even having seen most of these words before. This satisfaction was unlike any kind of satisfaction I've ever experienced in my entire life. Don't get me wrong, I love learning, but this feeling was just unparalleled. I didn't know it at the time, but the feeling in this moment would be a feeling I'd be chasing every time I'd study Japanese from now on. This feeling was a huge burst of motivation, and just in time for my new kanji book. I've heard so many people say that this book is great for learning kanji, but for me, I was having a hard time learning anything from this book. With how many people speak so positively about this book, it's likely just a me problem, but I have to be honest with my experience. Very few of the mnemonics or meanings made any sense to me, and I felt like I was right back to square one, scared of kanji, knowing it had great potential to help me learn, but not knowing how to learn it. Maybe this was just a day one problem. So I continued to spend a little time every day working on a few kanji, but I was struggling to make them stick, understand what they mean, or understand how they relate to one another. However, I got more books than just remembering the kanji. The N5 vocab book was much more useful. Revolutionary? No, but it was nice to have a physical study tool. The book came with this red light filter in order to cover the answers, which were written in red. It's pretty clever. The translations are also in Vietnamese, so I started to make my flashcards in Vietnamese as well. Come on, you really think I would do that? 2 new languages at the same time? What kind of psycho do you think I am? Are you paying attention? I know I'm talking about books, and it's probably boring you to death. Here, this is for you that are bored. I'd end up leaving this book near my Windows machine, so that way when I was playing some games and in queue, I would take some time to look over a few words here and there. But the clock was dwindling. Am I ready? I don't feel ready. But one thing's for certain. I didn't commit this much time to let a little doubt stop me now. I'm so doomed. I'm so doomed, bro. Oh, it's making me feel like I'm in school again, about to take a test that I am not prepared for. Enough stalling. I guess it's time. It's time to take the, what's it called? I know I said I would be taking the N5, but in order to do that, I would have to drive hours from my house to a testing center and pay money that I don't have. So instead, I will be taking the TTBJ, which is a very close, free online substitute. So before I get started, here are some rules that I laid out for myself. Number 1, no opening up other tabs. As soon as the test is started, I stay on the test until the test is complete. Number 2, only answer questions if I genuinely think I know the answer. That means no guessing, and especially no using test-taking strategies to manipulate the results. So most of the time, I set up the camera in front of me so you can see my reaction to things. But for this particular test, I set up the camera behind me so you could make sure I'm not cheating. But I quickly realized that there's no way in hell anyone's gonna think I'm cheating on this test.
Oh no.
And this was just the first section, the easiest section of the entire test. Now the keen-eyed among you may realize that this is a multiple choice test. Easy peasy, right?
Oh my god.
No. This is the hardest multiple choice test I have ever taken in my entire life, and it's not even close. Maybe that's just the American education system back at it again, or maybe they designed this test to be diabolical.
What the f is this, bro?
How I passed high school was normally there's one answer that no matter how much you know, you can throw that answer away. It's clearly wrong. It's almost like a meme answer. And then there's another answer where if you know the material at all, you can throw that one away too. And then there's generally 2 answers that are kind of close to each other, and it tests your ability between those 2. So it pretty much becomes a coin flip at that point. Not with this test. It had 2 answers that could definitely be the solution. Now, where this test differed, were the remaining 2 answers sounded almost identical to the original 2 answers. So you were basically caught between 4 answers that could definitely be the solution unless you're really honed in and sharp on your Japanese. Much of the test was actually listening. And this started out somewhat simple, I guess. I mean, not for me, but at least you could hear the person speaking clearly. But the other sections? Please don't tell me all of this is gonna be like this. Now, listening wasn't the only thing this test tested me on. It also tested my grammar. And oh boy, when I ordered those 3 books, Kanji, vocab, and grammar, my grammar book never showed up. Eventually, Amazon just refunded me the money that I spent and told me, GG, look, my grammar ain't so good in English. So in Japanese, I was hopeless. I didn't study grammar a single time over this 30 days, so the results spoke for themselves.
I haven't known any of these. Get me the fuck out of here. Get me the fuck out of here. It's giving me so many kanji I don't even know how to read, let alone the grammar, even when it was telling me what the kanji was meaning. I didn't know. Get me the fuck out of here.
So not only was this an incredibly difficult multiple choice test, the hardest one I've ever taken, not only was the audio completely scuffed at times, but also this entire exam was on an insane time crunch. I have 4 seconds to reply. It was so tight that if you didn't know the answer off the first read, you're probably not gonna have time to get to every single question. Like, I thought I heard sa, so I'm looking for sa. I don't see sa. By the time I realize there's no sa, it's already wrong. And that was the case for me. basically every section of the exam, I didn't make it to the end. I just auto-failed several of the questions because I just didn't have time. All right. I'm like below random chance, man. Now, the original test that I was thinking about taking, it tests you on your N5 capabilities, the lowest level of Japanese. It's relatively a simple exam. However, with this test, it tests you on the entire Japanese language. And if you get a really low score, it just qualifies you as N5. So that meant most of the test was way harder than anything I had prepared for.
So painful. Not grammar 3. Grammar 2 was so hard already.
So can you pass the N5 in 30 days? Maybe you can, but I cannot. But one thing I'm certain of is I really enjoy language learning, especially the Japanese community on YouTube. There are some channels that are questionable, but there are way more channels that are very useful, very personable, and make a complex, daunting, and sometimes frustrating experience fun. Like, really fun. I'm not huge into anime, so if it weren't for some of these creators, I would have given up on this journey probably immediately. Although I didn't pass, I did find the answer I was looking for. But that answer is not satiating whatsoever. Just because I didn't pass the N5 this time doesn't mean I can't pass. So let's change the question. How long does it take for a normal guy like me to pass the N5? I will continue to study Japanese for as long as it takes until I pass the N5, which might take a while. But in the meantime, you can feel free to check out my Patreon. Just $2 a month supports me taking authentic deep dives into fields that I have no or very little experience in. You'll also get access to a Discord full of genuinely warm and authentic people, discussing anything from things they're learning to why League of Legends is a sack of shit. The link is where links go. I'm kinda capable. Thanks for watching.